Hey everybody, it's Eric again, and today we are going to start taking a look at these seatbelt humps back here. Thanks to everybody for your comments on the question on the mini tubs. I've decided, at least for the time being, I'm not going to bother doing that. Couple of reasons. Like I said, I never wanted mini tubs in this. I know mini tubs are cool, but it's just not something I ever wanted to do. So I don't want to do it unless I have to. And I'm still not convinced I have to. So I'm going to run with that premise for now. The other reason is I kind of mocked up the inside of the car a little bit here to give everybody the idea of what we're looking at. If you do the mini tubs on a second gen Camaro, this whole edge right here gets pushed out 2 inches this way, which means the seat has to get notched right there, the back seat has to get notched right there, and this trim piece right here has to get 2 inches extended to it as well, which is a non-trivial thing. It is plastic, and I really don't want to go down that road unless I really have to. That's a whole lot of work. The sheet metal part itself, I'm not that frightened of that. I would probably undertake that if that's all it took. But knowing all this other work that has to be done, I really don't want to do that. So I'm going to forego that for the moment. The work that we're doing here, kind of part of it has to be done anyway, which is relocating that seatbelt hole. Pull that out of the way. Here. So we're going to move the seat belt from here down to here. So that has to be done anyway if you do the mini tubs. This whole piece would be cut out if you were doing the mini tubs. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try and just section this part right through here and flatten this in this area here. And once we get that piece cut out, we'll put the wheel back in there and see how things look. It's about 1.5 inches from here to here, so it's a lot of clearance being blocked as the wheel's hitting right here. So being able to move that wheel back there, I think we'll be in a lot better shape. And then we can really crank the wheel up inside the wheel well and see how much clearance we have up top here. As I was doing the research on it, as I mentioned in comments, the conventional wisdom on these cars is you need 1/2 inch of clearance on the back there, the back side of the wheel. If you've got a good stiff suspension in the back with polyurethane and 4-link and everything, there's very little lateral motion on the rear end, so you don't need a lot of clearance in there. The only real issue is going over driveways and stuff where the rear end can really cock in some strange directions. So it's possible under those circumstances we're going to get some contact up in here. I'm not bothered by that. If that happens once in a while, I don't really care. If it's chronic, well, that's something else entirely, right? But and it could turn out even in that case, if we want to address that, we might even be able to just clearance that spot up there instead of doing the whole mini tub trick again. But anyway, so moral of the story, we're going to cut this part out right here and then stick the wheels back up in there and see what we're looking at. Now, 2 approaches I'm looking at here. I'm going to try the first approach first, hence being the first approach, which is kind of cutting it along the bottom line here, wherever the seam is. I got to find it exactly because it's kind of lumpy right there. And splitting it through here, and then some kind of relief cut up here, I'm not sure, and then trying to bend this stuff into place. I don't know how well that's going to work because I don't want this thing to look like it was just beat to snot. So if I can get in there and it's a 2-person job, someone coming behind holding a dolly and then hammering it, if I can get that to where I'm happy with the way that looks, then we get this part flush to where we want it, and then bend this bottom piece here, do the cutting and whatever behind it, and then just do that. If that doesn't work, the other approach I have is I found this piece of floor pan that I had left over that has this nice radius on it. And I do like the look in here, the way this is all radiused out and everything. So I was thinking this piece here, kind of line up something like that. Get a better view, like something like that, right? But imagine that being flush against the back. So this is flat here, and then it radiuses back out, and then I try and roll that top edge so it's not a sharp edge right there, but just kind of an S-curve kind of thing out to here somewhere. I think that would look cool, but that's all cutting. So, well, that's plan B, or the second option. So first option is just see if we can get it bent to where we want it to go, and then we'll take it from there. I don't really think the bending option is going to work. I think it's going to be a lot of work to try and flatten that down, but we'll see. Alright, so we cut this guy out here. This is what this guy looks like. So it looks like a sandwich of, I don't know, probably 18 gauge, 20 gauge here, and then this is 16 gauge here. So it looks like this thing is welded to the 16 gauge, and then the 18 or whatever it is just spot welded here. So what I'm going to do is take this piece off, and then I'm going to butt weld this back in place where it was, and then put a sheet of whatever this is over the top of the whole thing to seal it up, rather than trying to bust off this 16 here. That's got a good weld on it. I'm just going to leave it like it is. So do the same thing. Cut a hole here and stick that through the bottom. And then what I did here is I came around from the inside and marked where this edge is, because it's a little goofy. This comes up and then goes back down right there, so I marked sort of where the top of this is. So I'm going to cut along that edge, and then we can start pushing that in and figure out where our line's going to be, and then we can cut this piece. Up here is just the 18, 20, whatever, and then down here is where that sandwich is, the heavier stuff, so we have more cutting to do down here. But anyway, I'm going to cut that piece off and start bending now. Alright, so we ran a line here and across here, and we bent this piece out of the way. Trying to line that up about where that's going to be. So it's around there somewhere. And then I'm trying to figure out how I want to bend this part to make it look as nice as possible and not have a big sharp corner right there. So this is about as far out as we think we needed to go for the wheel, so we're pretty far clear of that. So I could try and come back on a diagonal here, try and follow this line all the way up to there, which is kind of what I'm leaning towards. And then I could flatten this down a little bit, push that whole thing in right there maybe. Not sure. But I'm trying to figure out where I want to make the relief cuts here. I need to probably cut it here somewhere and down here somewhere so that these pieces can fold down. I'm just kind of eyeing that for a minute. Alright, here's the current state of affairs. So, excuse me, ground down this flange here, pounded this guy in. This is hard to see what this used to look like, right? But this line right here used to come out here and then go back in like that. So we brought that whole piece in there by a good 1.5 inches or something. As a good indication, give you an idea of how much hammering has been going on back here. So remember this, we cut out of that hole there. And you can see that hole's pretty much gone. So a lot of metal got moved out of the way here. Now, in the case of the mini tubs, all of this would have been cut out, so it's not really any different. But I'm going to go through and put all this metal back where it's supposed to go and patch it up. I just wanted to show you how much things have moved there. So this is kind of the line we're trying to follow, that first one that I created there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the spot welds here, take this piece off of the inner wheel housing there, so that I can weld up. There's a 3-piece sandwich right here. So I'll take this off, and I can weld that middle piece, and I can come around from the back and weld the thickest piece, I think, is on the outside there, or the inside, depending on how you're looking at it. And there's such a big gap here anyway, trying to fill that gap would be hard, so I'll just cut a new piece of metal to fill that whole thing in there and then solve the problem that way. And then we bent all these pieces into place here, and this is looking pretty good. I gotta flatten this off here so it's not a spiky point right there. But it's all looking pretty good. Now that's, I don't know, probably a couple hours work. It's not too much, so heck of a lot faster than doing a mini tub. Anyway, so I'll keep working on this. All right, so we're doing the fitment test now. It's a little late. I actually started welding things up, but oh well. So where the wheel is sitting right now, it could come up a hair more from here, but at that level right there, it's rubbing on the inside of the quarter panel right there. It's hitting in the very back corner there where the inner wheelhouse comes around the corner, but nowhere else. So all the clearancing we did up there is fine. I'll show you in a second. And so my dad and I are here just kind of pondering what is ride height and how high should high be and all of that. And fundamentally, if this is the peak of the travel up, we're good, because I can clearance that little spot back there that it's hitting. And maybe it'll rub a little bit on the inside of the quarter panel there. But that's pretty darn high up. If you look where the axle is there relative to everything else, it's pretty high up. Not by shut your face standards, but by ASIC Eric standards, I think that's okay. So if this comes down a couple of inches, 2 to 3 inches from there for ride height, then it's only going to travel up a couple inches from ride height. And so I think we're good, that it's not going to hit anything. So I'll climb under there and show you how all the clearancing looks right here, and then we'll drop it down a couple of inches and see how it looks and see if that's a reasonable ride height setting. I mean, we can't do it for sure because we don't have the rear end and everything in there, but just eyeballing it. All right, so here's the back of the inner wheelhouse that I was talking about. So you can see it hits right in the corner right there. We can bend this out a little bit right there and get probably any clearance we need. But if you look across the back everywhere else there, I can park that there for a second. Here's where we did all the clearancing over there. And you can see it's just as wide as it is everywhere else. And the front of the pocket that we opened up right there has got plenty of room. I'll climb up under there in a second and show you that. But you see all the way around here, we've got kind of the clearance we need. That's probably 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of clearance all the way around, except right there. And like I said, we can match that. That lip comes down about 1 inch. So we could bend that out of the way a little bit and get a little bit more clearance. Let me show you the front. All right, and here you can see where we clearanced it out here. Plenty of room up there now, so no problem. We can bend this little corner right there back a little bit more if that's a problem, but I don't think it's gonna be. I think it's fine. We're still working on the welds here, so. All right, so let's drop it down to where we think it should be for ride height. All right, so that was about a 2.25, maybe 2.5 inch drop from where it was. And I think that looks pretty tasty right there as ride height would go. So I think we're in the right ballpark. I don't think we need to do any more clearancing than that. I'll do a quick climb under there and show you what it looks like at this level. All right, I got my dad holding the wheel here because it's wanting to wobble around. But now you can see all that clearance looks good. We got room here now. It's moving around because my dad's trying to hold it steady, but it should be about like that ish. Like I said, we can bend that out of the way to get some more clearance. So I think we're going to be okay is the moral of the story. So let's pull the wheel out and I'll show you what we did on the inside there. Sure. All right, so show you what we did here. So this piece here, I bent around to that radius right there and bent this piece. This was coming out at an angle here, remember? So we bent that back in. So I had to split the metal right here. Behind this here, this is just 20 gauge, and then right at the edge of that seam right there, right here, is where the 16 gauge starts for the seat belt reinforcement. So I cut it just on that side of that edge so that I don't have to do any seam with the 16 gauge. So I welded in a little patch there to fill in the gap. So this whole thing is going to be flush all the way over to here, and then this piece bends around here. This will follow that same radius. And then this piece here, we're gonna have that kind of tail over like this and meet up with this piece here. Something like that. And again, I still have to flatten that little piece down right there. That looks pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Show you what that looks like on the line. So you can see that's a straight line now, all the way down to there. So that looks pretty nice. I'll show you the inside of the car. And now somebody's house alarm's going off in the background. All right, so to show you the inside here, this is the piece we bent around here. So we'll follow that around there somewhere, cut these pieces to line up with that, fill in these little gaps. And then, like I said, there will be a piece of sheet metal on the outside that follows this radius that's going to be spot welded to this outer piece here. And then what I did here is this is the 16 gauge seat belt support underneath. This is where we cut out the old seat belt hole right here, and you can see how much smaller that hole is now versus what it used to be, how much we brought that in. Cut a new hole for it here, so that's going to go there. And then we'll go ahead and we'll weld this piece of 16 gauge to this piece of 16 gauge. And I pulled back the 20 gauge away from that edge so that I can weld down the 16 gauge first, get that nice and solid. Then we'll put a patch of 20 gauge over all of this and seal that on top of that, put weld through primer in it and all that. So that's the plan. I think it's going to work out pretty well. Again, let me know what you guys think. I think it's fine. Once we get the rear end here and we get it put together, if we find out at that point that we still don't have enough clearance when we have the right height set and all that, again, it's not too late to do the mini tubs if we have to. That's still always an option. I put this thing basically where it wanted to be if we had the mini tubs anyway. So if we get the mini tubs, basically we're just going to cut out all this work that we did in this little corner here. But it's only a couple of days of work. It's not that much. 6 hours of work or something. It's not a lot of work as opposed to what it's going to take to do the mini tubs. So that's the plan. Again, let me know if you guys have any comments, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks.